convicted and then I think subsequently charged with treason for these two transactions. In essence, he ignored U.S. law to trade high-level technology to the Russians. But even more egregious, he essentially took $300,000 in illegal Chinese campaign contributions, passed through Johnny Chung in return for a three-party transaction in which he sold the actual technology that targets our missiles, the accuracy of our missiles, to the Chinese government. By any other name, this is treason.
The elite are writing their own Declaration of Independence in the legacy of their puppets of globalism, and the shot has been heard around the world. Paul Joseph Watson writes, many Americans reacted furiously to the FBI's announcement that Hillary Clinton should not face criminal charges over her email scandal, with some asserting that since the former Secretary of State appears to be above the law, they would also now refuse to follow the law. One respondent asked, why should we follow the law when our leaders don't? This Clinton BS has sealed the deal for me. We are ruled by a corrupt cabal that is above the law. Attorney General Loretta Lynch has already said she would abide by the FBI's recommendation. Of course she will. She orchestrated it illegally right out in the open. Make no mistake about it. If Hillary is elected president, she will bring with her decades of protected criminal activity, a state of mind that she will unleash on the founding principles of the United States of America. This is how America dies. John Bound for INFOWARS.com.
Let's go ahead and go to Sergeant B from Texas. You're on the air. Welcome.
Hey, Alex. I wanted to put a call out to everyone listening. We need everyone out there who has any skills in multimedia, audio, video, PowerPoint, slideshows, you name it. Need a campaign and start putting out a list of everyone who's been prosecuted for the same crimes Hillary committed with the quote by Director Comey saying no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case because it's obviously bull. Right in U.S. Code 793, it is stated in multiple paragraphs, very wordy. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it does state very clearly what he said in that press conference today, that she did commit these crimes, and it does state, shall be fined under this title or in prison not more than 10 years or both.
Levin and Kurlitz said, this certainly sends the signal that they are nearing an end to their investigation. Typically, the way we structured the investigations when I was a federal prosecutor is that we would seek to interview the target last. Stephen Levin continues, as you begin to interview people who are extremely close to the target of an investigation, people who are considered confidants, you typically interview those people towards the final stages of the investigation. So that way, if they tell you something that is contrary to something you've already learned, you can immediately challenge them on that information. Tech activist Marcel Lazar, a.k.a. Guccifer, claims to have breached Hillary's server at least twice. Guccifer said he first compromised Clinton confidant Sidney Blumenthal's AOL account in March of 2013 and used that as a stepping stone to the Clinton server. He said he accessed Clinton's server like twice, though he described the contents as not interesting to him at the time. Doodles by Bill Clinton appear to back up Guccifer's claims that were released as far back as 2013. It bears repeating the extent to which Hillary violated her position in the State Department, because most people have become completely accustomed to corruption as business as usual. Here are the facts. As the nation's chief diplomat, Hillary Clinton was responsible for ascertaining whether information in her possession was classified and acknowledged that negligent handling of that information could jeopardize national security, according to a copy of an agreement she signed upon taking the job. A day after assuming office as Secretary of State, Clinton signed a sensitive compartmented information non-disclosure agreement that laid out criminal penalties for any unauthorized disclosure of classified information. The sensitive compartmented information non-disclosure agreement details how Hillary has been granted access to sensitive compartmented information, or SCI, classified information. The agreement states that Hillary hereby acknowledges that the disclosure of SCI may constitute violations of United States criminal laws and that nothing in the agreement constitutes a waiver by the United States of the right to prosecute for any statutory violation. The agreement is also severable, meaning if one part is unenforceable, the remainder of the provisions in the agreement remain in full force and effect. Bottom line, U.S. intelligence officials determined at least 4 and up to 305 of the emails Hillary's aides printed out were from Hillary's personal server and were SCI at the time they were written. 2 of the emails discussed classified drone information deemed top secret by the CIA. Hillary Clinton faces 10 years behind bars as required under the Espionage Act. Jeffrey Sterling, a CIA leak, was sentenced to 3.5 years after disclosing national defense information concerning a covert operation. And General David Petraeus was slapped with 2 years probation and a fine of $100,000 for revealing classified documents to his mistress. Petraeus, a former director of the CIA, a 4-star general, and CENTCOM commander, had served our country for 37 years. So why would Hillary Clinton deserve immunity? Ignorance and/or negligence of Hillary's possession of highly sensitive, classified emails is no joke. In fact, if Hillary does walk away from this investigation with a slap on the wrist, after she personally went to great lengths to cover up a mountain of evidence, the entire farce will demonstrate just how far gone the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Justice Department really are. Hillary's path of deception could even serve to take those departments to the cleaners if Donald Trump becomes president and keeps his word. John Bound for INFOWARS.com.
Well, more than 160 people are now known to have died in Sunday's appalling attack in Baghdad. Now, this is just one of 8 different attacks that are believed to have been carried out by the Islamic State over the last month. And of course, this is the Muslim month of Ramadan. Now, Ramadan is traditionally viewed as the most spiritual, most holy month in the Islamic calendar, a time of penance and temperance. But now it's being juxtaposed with the views of these radical Islamists who are using this as a month of conquest, plunder. They say it's part of the history, Islamic history itself. The Prophet Muhammad, of course, waged his first jihad in the month of Ramadan. So they're taking this as to be the month of war. I mean, Margaret, talk to me a little bit about just some of these attacks. And people, I know we don't talk about this a lot in the West, but these are really appalling.
So these 81 bodies of the 215 that died, they were so badly charred that DNA testing is required on their bone fragments to be able to identify them. This is happening as one bomb ripped through Baghdad yesterday. Hours later, early Sunday morning, a secondary bomb in this busy market. I brought you some before and after photographs. The carnage is unbelievable. Now, we know, Leanne, that ISIS has claimed responsibility for this deadly attack. They've been claiming responsibility for a string of deadly attacks and suicide bombers, one in Saudi Arabia. The most heinous story coming out of an ISIS attack, ISIS affiliates, was in Bangladesh, aside from this Baghdad bombing, where we saw 4 ISIS affiliates storm into a restaurant. Anybody that couldn't cite a verse of the Quran, they were immediately tortured and killed. It's despicable. Now, this is happening all over the globe, including here in the United States, San Bernardino, Orlando, arguably ISIS affiliates, terrorism. But what we have is a central problem with our narrative. And I brought you a few clips of President Obama. I took this from the New York Post. And he's basically an apologist. And I'm going to play this clip for you, and it's remarkable. There are 2 words that are missing in this clip, and it's so obvious to the rest of the world, except just not him. He's the one saying it. Take a listen.
Keep everybody in their thoughts and prayers.
Say a prayer for them. We are praying for them
Today for prayer.
Pray with you today. We don't yet know why this individual did what he did. None of us can know exactly what triggered this vicious attack. We've reached no definitive judgment on the precise motivations of the killer.
Never know fully what causes somebody to take the life of another.
We can't fully know what leads a man to do such a thing.
But we're going to have to change our laws. It ought to lead to some sort of transformation. And we're going to have to come together and take meaningful action.
Wow. So not only is Hillary Clinton not a criminal within this Obama administration, but also radical Islamic terrorism isn't one of our most existential threats.
That's absolutely right. So he refuses to use the words radical Islam. He says that we're going to call this terror That 30-second clip, we're going to pray. We hear him say, we don't really know why they're doing it. We can't identify the enemy. We really don't have a reason or a cause. His rationale is so baffling. Meanwhile, Islamic terrorism is being waged against the U.S. It's being waged against Western partners, against Christians, against non-radical Muslims. Anybody who dares stand up to radical Islam is beheaded, drowned, forced to be a sex slave, and yet our president refuses to identify it. And I just want to say that radical Islam in some articles, and you and I talked about this offset, it's being identified as the #1 threat to the U.S. currently. That's it.
So how can we have the CIA director coming out and saying, expect these attacks here? It just seems like absolutely they probably already have them planned. And then we have a president who goes and plays golf because he knows he's on his way out. And his main agenda is to just continue to whitewash this threat.
You're absolutely right. So there seems to be an ulterior motive to this president for not wanting to call this what it is. And it's been written about extensively in every speech that he gives, wanting to pray for victims, pray for victims. Well, who's he praying to, Leanne? I don't understand this guy. We have a very serious threat in radical Islam, and it's waged a war. And Ramadan is considered to be a holy month. So if we're talking about radicalized Islam, they consider this a holy month for their holy war. These attacks are holy to them, and they have every right to wage them on anybody that's a non-believer to them. So we have a serious problem. You're absolutely right. He'd rather be playing golf, going to his vacation house, butting around with celebrities, doing anything that he can except identifying serious threats to this country. You brought up an excellent point. We talked about the CIA director, John Brennan, who off the cuff said last week, he knows that ISIS is planning to attack the U.S. similar to what they did in Turkey. He just doesn't know when or where. If that's not a serious threat to the U.S., I don't know what is.
Do you think it's just more important to them to be able to get open borders, to get their globalism, to push through the one world government, that they're so willing to endanger the lives of everyone, including themselves?
That's why Trump has had such a powerful message, because they're awake. They understand that the political elites in this country, they have a very specific agenda, and it is an open border policy. It is a non-vetting process for a mass influx of refugees coming from ISIS-heavy areas, parts of Syria, and I'm all for humanitarian aid. I'm all for helping victims of tragedy. I think that we as a nation, but why does this administration think that we have a blind eye to this mass influx of people that are not being vetted? And then, of course, we have our CIA director come out and say, oh, guess what? By the way, there's going to be another attack, but we're not going to do anything to close the floodgates and properly vet people coming in the country.
Right. What are they going to do when there is a sort of massive attack like we've seen in a lot of these airports around the globe? I mean, what are they going to do at that point?
Well, what we saw the president do in the Omar Mateen attack, we saw an all-out assault on the Second Amendment, blaming people that own guns in this country, blaming Christians, blaming everything except for radical Islam. Every single thing got a blame except for that PC buzzword. We can't say that. I'm fully expecting, Leanne, I mean, the PC police are so on top of this. They're trying to criminalize, making it a form of hate speech to even call this war what it is. So I think that if we see another attack, we're going to see the same old rhetoric, because it keeps, it's cyclical. It's the same rhetoric. If you listen to his speeches over and over, the same buzzwords. It's a gun problem. It's a racist problem. It's everything except for what it is.
Right. And of course, we know decades ago, Eric Holder said that was what they were going to have to do, is say this over and over and over again, almost brainwash the people into accepting that it's a gun problem. It's not radical Islam. And we see so many people pushing back against that. And obviously there's billions of Muslims in the world. Obviously, they're not all terrorists. We get that. But we can't overlook the fact that there are people who truly believe that they are practicing the real and true Islamic faith here with committing jihad during the month of Ramadan. I mean, do we expect now that the month is over? Is this going to end until next year?
I don't think that we're going to see an end to the attempts of radical Islam to wipe us off the face of the earth, because they feel that they're engaged in a holy war with us. I think that Ramadan, they called to step up these attacks during this period. But Leanne, they're ruthless. There are no rules to this. This isn't war. It's guerrilla warfare. It's not a game of whatever we can expect, engaging in the rules of war. This is guerrilla warfare. They understand it very well. Unfortunately, it looks like our leadership doesn't.
Right. Well, and I know that WikiLeaks and some other groups are planning on attacking Huma Abedin and her ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. And don't you think if Trump, his biggest aide for 20-something years,